some NFL breaking news, and the Chicago Bears have hired Ben Johnson. There was a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors that the Raiders were the front runners to be able to go out and get the Lions offensive coordinator, but unfortunately, they fell a little bit short. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and unlike a lot of Raiders fans out there, I'm heartbroken right now. I feel like it's a little bit of a kick in the nuts, but coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why Johnson picked the Bears over the Raiders, where the Raiders now are kind of looking in terms of head coach, GM, and then at the very end of today's show, I'm just going to show you how Raider Nation is reacting to the news of BJ now in Chicago. Now, I got to ask, though, because this show is an interactive show, and I got to know on a scale of 1 to 10, how upset are you right now that Johnson is not going to be the Raiders head coach? 1, you're not upset at all. 10, you're absolutely devastated. For me personally, I'm going to put it at a 7 or an 8 because I am extremely heartbroken. But I also, 2 weeks ago, said, I don't think that Johnson's going to get the job. I'm happy that we were even in the consideration of getting it. I'm happy that Ben Johnson took the time to even talk to the Raiders and Tom Brady, because when you look at a resume, we all knew it. The Raiders don't have a great resume for a brand new head coach, especially the top guy out there when you don't have a quarterback. I'll admit, I would love to know what his decision would have been if the Raiders had the number 1 overall pick if you don't win those 2 meaningless games in New Orleans and that other meaningless game in Jacksonville. Because quite frankly, I think when you hear a lot of the things that are out there, he really took this Bears job because of Caleb Williams, because of this quarterback situation. Look at the NFL playoffs right now. All these teams have legit quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. You got Patrick Mahomes. All these teams that went far were because of the quarterback play, and that was the biggest question mark around the Raiders, and Ben is obviously going to get a fat paycheck. The Raiders, according to sources that I talked to, were somewhere around $15 million per year for Johnson. They were willing to offer him somewhere like 5 for 75, 6 for 90, fully guaranteed, and Johnson decided to take another gig. I know everything that Raiders fans were hoping for, but I also am going to sit up here and say, yes, I am sad, but also it's just the simple fact of I really never thought Ben Johnson was going to be the Raiders head coach 2 weeks ago. I got excited, and this morning I thought Ben Johnson was going to be the head coach. Yesterday, I thought Ben Johnson was going to be the Raiders head coach, and it was really kind of looking like there was a lot of smoke, and it was going to lead to the Raiders being able to get Johnson. I don't know if something changed in the last 24 hours, but we do got to say that the Raiders tried. I think they put their best foot forward. They did what good organizations do. They figured out what candidates Ben Johnson would want. They brought in his buddy yesterday, Lance Newmark, on an interview. They are ready to hire a head coach or a GM. They have satisfied both of the Rooney rules in terms of 2 in-person interviews with GM and head coach, so the Raiders can go out and they can hire a head coach and go out and hire a GM. They tried. They really, really did. But he ended up taking one interview or one in-person interview, and that just ended up being Chicago. He flew there, but the deal was already done before he even landed. They ended up getting their head coach. So this was a list that I put together probably last week when a lot of the information started to come in, and I know Deion's on this list, and I'll tell you this. I almost wonder if the new Deion conversations get to be reopened, because I think the door was shut so quickly on Sanders because the Raiders just wanted to be able to show, hey, Ben, we're all in on you, and that's the only guy that we're on. The other names, though, Pete Carroll, I would say, is the new front runner to get the job. The name that I would love for the Raiders to talk to, there's 2 of them, Todd Monken, Liam Coen, 2 young. Coen's a young offensive mind. Monken's older, but he's an offensive-minded guy. He's gotten the best version out of Lamar Jackson over the past 2 seasons. He did a great job in Georgia for 3 years calling plays there. Todd Monken's a name. Though, if they end up building a staff, I could see it being Pete Carroll. And, again, based on one of the conversations that I had, they could bring in somebody like Robert Saleh as a DC. And then when Pete Carroll decides to, hang it up because he's 73, you just give the keys to the car to Robert Saleh. One of the very first GM candidates the Raiders brought in was Eric Sullivan. He's with Green Bay. Good friends with Saleh. Good friends with the LaFleur family. Saleh's good friends with the LaFleur family. I almost wonder if the Raiders could bring in LaFleur, the offensive coordinator for the Rams, because he's not calling plays over there for Sean McVay, and he could call plays here for the Raiders. A lot of moving parts, a lot of news to be able to break down. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on, because there will be, and I mean this, a lot of moving parts around the Raiders, around the NFL here in the next 24 to 48 hours. So coming up next here, let's look at how the nation reacts, because that's why I love doing this show. Even when bad news happens, you're the only people that I want to talk to. You're the only people that I want to vent to. Like, I was taking Chuck out for a walk, and I got the update. Chuck's called me, and I said, I'll be there as quick as I can. Let's talk about it. Because I am a believer, like, you need to vent. You need to be able to get out those frustrations. But I don't think that this should be the Raiders lost Ben Johnson. I think the Bears won Ben Johnson. We put our best foot forward. We came up a little bit short. But you know what? The Bears took Caleb Williams, and maybe they should have taken Jaden. The Raiders, what if we end up getting that second guy, and it ends up being the proper choice? No matter what, I am going to be confident that the new Raiders head coach is an improvement over Antonio Pierce. And I am confident that the new Raiders GM is going to be better than Tom Telesco. And all you can ask every single offseason, did you get better? The Raiders will get better this offseason. So before we get into all the crazy reactions here from the nation, today's show is sponsored by Game Time. And I know the playoffs are here, and the playoffs are all about bringing people together. And it's one of the reasons why I want y'all to go get started with Game Time, because Game Time is focused on bringing people together in 2025 and creating those lasting memories. You might not always remember the score, but you're going to remember all those awesome experiences that you had, whether it's a comedy event, whether it is a baseball game, football game, basketball game. And also, Game Time's got a brand new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. If you are somebody that was like, Mitch, I was thinking about going to the Natty, but the tickets are expensive. The tickets are extremely expensive. That's what happens when you got Notre Dame and Ohio State, two very, very big fan bases. But if you were to think about getting tickets for a Raiders game, think about tickets for the Natty, download the Game Time app, create an account, Chat Sports, $20 off, and just watch how much those ticket prices will drop the closer and closer and closer that game gets. Now, it might be a little bit different for the Natty compared to a normal football game, but download Game Time. I promise you it's going to be the best place to get those tickets. So, let's see how Raider Nation is reacting to the news of the Bears going out and hiring Ben Johnson. It's a cold day here where I live, and walking in, I felt like I was walking through Chicago. It was a tough one, man. Let's go to Malachi. Really don't care. Next up, Pete or Sanders. And honestly, I think this is the mindset that the nation needs to have. You can't dwell on what ifs at this point. You can't dwell on, Ben Johnson. It's how the NFL works. Time to move on. Time to get your sights, now on a different direction. And if it's Pete Carroll, I am just okay with the idea that no matter what, we did get better this offseason. Let's go to midnight. Brady. He's going with them MFers. He's probably not happy that Ben Johnson ended up taking the Chicago job, but I also think that he understands where this world is. They have a quarterback. The Raiders don't. Let's go to Strike Gaming, another rookie head coach. Is that what we wanted again? I think what people got to stop looking at is it just a rookie head coach, or is it making an improvement at the head coaching position? If Antonio Pierce was a quarterback, we would talk about AP at a QB level much worse than the way that I talk about Aiden O'Connell. Now, I would say the way Antonio Pierce performed as a head coach is the same way that a guy like Gardner Minshew performed on the field. You wouldn't want to roll it back with Minshew because he was that bad, just like you shouldn't want to roll it back again with Antonio Pierce after how bad he was this past year. I know what Jaden's doing. I know what Cliff Kingsbury's doing, but we also were unable to get those guys. And yes, he was given a bad hand, but he didn't play that hand well. Miguel, with Johnson and Vrabel off the board, who are your top 5 coaches to watch, and what college coach could be a possibility other than Sanders? I actually think that the only possible coach is Deion Sanders coming out of college. From there on out, the top 5 guys that I would say are Pete Carroll. Steve Spagnuolo is a sneaky name to watch, and he's a Chiefs guy, but it's just the name that I'm going to throw out there. I would want Todd Monken. I would want Liam Coen. Those would be some other names that I would throw out there as well. But we've interviewed Vance Joseph. And then Robert Saleh, I don't think is the head coach that the Raiders would hire. but I could see them hiring him as a DC to then take over Pete Carroll once Pete Carroll decides to leave in a year, 2, maybe 3 years down the line. My question, though, is this. Who should be the Raiders' top option to be that head coach? We were all in on Ben Johnson here on this show. We were all in on BJ. Now that that's the fact, who should the Raiders be looking at? If it was up to me and if I was the one calling the shots, it would be Todd Monken and it would be Liam Coen. I think the Raiders, though, are going to look at a guy like Pete Carroll. Let's go to Kennedy Films. Which quarterback gives us the best chance to make the playoffs? We got to find a head coach. You got to find a GM. You got to find an OC and DC, and then we'll worry about going to the playoffs and getting a quarterback. I would say right now the Raiders' top option for a QB is Shedeur Sanders, and that hasn't changed. Let's go to the Ghost of the Navigator. This team is cursed. See, you can't say the Raiders are cursed and then also say that the Bears aren't cursed, right? The Bears have never had a quarterback to throw for over 4,000 yards. I don't like the word cursed. I think it's just this is a poorly run organization, but the Commanders showed in 1 year you can flip the script. And it can happen. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at what Washington did, and I'm trying to copy it. Let's go to Joseph Perry. Again, man, thank you so much for supporting the show. Boz, definitely a little disappointed, especially after waking up and reading the SI report on the Raiders getting close with Johnson. It was rumored 6 years, $90 million, next coach Coen and Spytek. I still think John Spytek is a legit candidate to be this next GM. And then the other name that I'll throw out there is Ed Dodds. Ed Dodds has got a lot of Raiders connections. Ed Dodds has a lot of Jed Hughes connections. Ed Dodds has a lot of Pete Carroll connections. So because of those names, I would say they're to keep in mind. Coen for head coach, Spytek, though, for GM. I like that pairing as well. Let's go to Steve. What up, man? Goff's performance is why Ben would go coach a quarterback like Caleb/Drake. Jaden, cool, calm demeanor, won that game. We need Cam Ward for our specific situation. If you told me right now that we miss out on Ben Johnson, but we get Cam Ward, I'm okay with that situation. I love Cam Ward. I think he's an unbelievable quarterback. He's my favorite quarterback in this year's draft. I don't think Goff's performance has anything to do with anything in that regard, but I will say this. When you watch how talented Caleb Williams is, and when you watch how bad that Bears team is, isn't it a little bit interesting that Bears team was as bad as what they were? I know Matt Eberflus was bad. I get it. But I'm wondering if Ben Johnson a few years from now is going to go, shit, I don't know if I should have taken that Chicago job. John, do not hire the Seagulls' old coach, so Pete Carroll. It's not me making the decision. If it was up to me, I wouldn't hire Pete Carroll. But if the Raiders do hire Pete Carroll, I'm not going to be mad about it. Carroll is a good head coach. Pete Carroll is an upgrade over what we had. And every offseason, you got to improve free agency, trades, draft, and even coaches. And the Raiders will do all of that this offseason. Noah, upset, yes. Surprise, no. We were not favored because one reason quarterback. This also means we will not get a quarterback in round 1, in my opinion. I don't know if the last part there impacts it at all. I still think the Raiders are going to try to go all in on that quarterback situation. But when you look at what the Raiders tried to do today, right, like they interviewed Brandon Brown, assistant GM of the New York Giants, somebody who was rumored to love Shedeur Sanders. I think that when you look at Deion's comments from last week, he said a couple of teams that he didn't want Shedeur to go for. I think Deion is a very smart man, and when you say couple, that's 2. That to me says Titans, Browns. Figure out what the Giants were thinking about Shedeur. I still think the Raiders try to move up and go get him. Let's go to Mike. Pete's been coaching since the 70s. No thanks. I know he's been coaching a long time, and I know he's 73 years old. Donovan, Bears suck more. Bears eat corn sideways. No butter. Bade, I know you hate it, but at this point, F it. Bring back lackluster when we have finally be our turn for someone good to happen. Wait, I see 2 different ones. Oh, it's Gruden. Yeah, bringing back Gruden doesn't make any sense. You'd have to pay him again. Like, why am I going to pay John Gruden again when he wasn't good at his job to begin with? He didn't have a winning record. I know that the Raiders were winning games in that final season. I know what it looked like. But for a team that's got a lot of money in free agency, a lot of draft picks, a lot of big decisions to make on roster construction, I'm not going to allow Gruden. If you want to bring Gruden back as a QB coach, fine. I don't want him as an OC, and you don't want him as a head coach. It doesn't make sense. He was bad at his job. Let's go to Daniel. What up, Daniel? Man, what a disappointment. Any head coach hire now will be lackluster when we finally be our turn for something good to happen. Something good will happen. And, and I knew that if we got our hopes up this much around Ben and he ended up taking another job, it would hurt like this. And, it hurts like this because of how bad that Raiders season was. When you're as bad as what this Raiders season went, you want to be able to celebrate something in the offseason. And it kind of felt like everything was going our way for the first time, right? Like, you get all these reports, and nobody really thought Ben Johnson was going to come to the Raiders. And then all of a sudden, it became a real possibility. And then, the hope started to build. And I think that hope build because after a year like you go through, where it doesn't work with a head coach that a lot of people wanted to work in AP, and it doesn't go the way that you're hoping that it goes, and it's as bad as what it was, you want it to be able to get turned around. And I'm hurting too, man. Believe me when I tell you this. I am hurting too. But there are so many other good coaching candidates out there, even a guy like Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy is an outstanding head coach who was in a bad situation with Jerry Jones. Mike McCarthy's got a 600 record, you know what I mean, as a coach. That deserves to be looked at. Raider Biggs, in pathetic Raiders fashion, the Raiders weren't aggressive enough to get the guy like in last year's draft. So this is two things. One, the report from Schefter saying that the Raiders never tried to trade up for Jaden Daniels. I'm just telling y'all that's just not true. The Raiders did. They tried it. And I personally think Pierce's team leaked that out to Schefter, and Schefter's got a pass to putting out false information that he's been given. The Condoleezza Rice story is one of my favorite of all time. And then I don't think it has anything to do with them not being aggressive. The Raiders were extremely aggressive. It just came down to this, even if they offered the exact same money, you would actually make more money in Las Vegas. It just came down to quarterback, where if you're somebody that, you wanted the Ferrari and the Raiders are offering you a Honda that maybe you can figure out a way and they're going to buy any car you want. But if you grew up and you wanted the Ferrari and you think Caleb Williams is that Ferrari, I don't think that has anything to the Raiders not trying. I think it's just the decision Ben Johnson made came down to quarterback, and it came down to quarterback alone. Nico, Raiders reporters that led us down this path of thinking he was in the bag should get fired. Ben went and signed with the Bears the first day that he could. I don't think that this is fair either. And I say that simply because the Raiders beat reporters also are going to take the information that they're given. Just like I am going to talk about the information that I am given. I'll also always say this, and this is just the cold hard fact. When you go through the amount of changes that the Raiders have gone through from top to bottom, coaches, it is hard to get sources because they change every week. It's also why I say, you got to take Raiders beat reporters with a grain of salt. I'm not a beat reporter. I don't try to be a beat reporter. I'm a Raiders fan that when I see information out there, I relay it to you. When I get information that's told to me, I relay it to you. And the information that Raiders beat reporters were getting was the exact same information that I was getting. Go look at the NFL circles right now. Diana Rossini tweeted, she's shocked. Something happened, I think, literally in the last 24 hours where the ball started to get rolling in favor again of Chicago, and it can change very quickly in that regard. What if the Bears offered him $25 million per year, fully guaranteed? I don't know what the details of this contract are yet, and we'll find out what it is. But I don't think it's fair to call for Raiders beat reporters jobs because in the NFL, things change all the time just like that. It's just an unfortunate situation. But reminder, subscribe for coaching news, rumors, updates, all that kind of good stuff. Chugs and I are going to be live later on tonight for Notre Dame and Ohio State. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I need y'all to show up because I need a smile on my face. And if you're like, you know what, Mitch, I need a smile on my face too. I didn't plan on getting as crazy as what I was gonna because I was always going to be on our Ben Johnson watch. After today, I'm going balls to the wall on that freaking watch party tonight because I need to smile a little bit. And if you are just watching this randomly, we're going to stay live here. We're going to answer questions probably until about 6 p.m. Eastern time, and then I'm going to jet on out of here. So don't go anywhere to the 4,200 people that are still here rocking with Jeremy Chugs and I.